Sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. A very warm welcome to our new video. Today in this video we will be solving Economics 9708 Paper 1 May June exam series for the year 2026. Question number 1. Polio vaccination is provided free of charge in some countries. How can this service be classified? Polio vaccination is a demerit good. Now, a demerit good is a good that has negative externality, whereas polio vaccination has a positive externality. So, option A is not the right answer. Free good. Free good is a good that has zero opportunity cost, and also it is unlimited in supply. Whereas polio vaccination has an opportunity cost for sure, and it is limited in supply. So free good is also not the right answer. Polio vaccination is a merit good. Now, merit good is a good that has a positive externality, and polio vaccination also has a positive externality. So this option turns out to be right, but let's see the last option as well. Polio vaccination is a public good. Now, a public good has a property of being non-rival and non-excludable, whereas in the case of polio vaccination, it is rival and excludable. So it's not a public good either. So with all the given options for question number 1, option C turns out to be the right answer. Question number 2. The diagram shows the production possibility curve for an economy that can produce goods and services. Okay, fine. So we can see that over here there are output of goods, and over here there are output of services. If the economy is producing at the boundary of its PPC, that means the point of production lies on the production possibility curve. Which statement is not correct? So we need to identify the statement that is not correct. The economy is always producing both goods and services. Now this option turns out to be wrong. Why? Because let's assume that if the production is happening over here at point A. Now at point A, output of goods would be maximum, whereas output of services would be 0. So, and likewise, if the production is happening at this point, now at this point, output of services would be maximum, whereas output of goods would be 0. So under that scenario, the economy is always producing both goods and services seems to be not correct. But let's explore the other options as well before jumping on to the conclusion. The economy is using all the available resources. Now this option is correct because the economy is using all the available resources. That is what production possibility curve is actually showing. The opportunity cost of producing goods is constant. Now this option is also correct because we can see that PPC is a straight line, and the straight lined PPC is always the one that has a constant opportunity cost. There is no unemployment in the country. Now this option is also right because as the question states that the economy is producing at the boundary of the PPC, so this means there is no unemployment in the economy. So with all the given options, option A turns out to be the right answer for question number 2. Question number 3. Now the question number 3 says in the diagram JK is an economy's original possibility curve. JK is the original possibility curve. So this is the line of the original possibility curve. Okay, fine. What can cause the PPC to shift from JK to L? This means that the PPC is shifting inwards from JK to JL. Okay, fine. So we need to find the reason why the PPC shifted inwards on the manufacturing good axis. A fall in the output per worker of manufacturing goods. This option seems to be right because when there will be a fall in the output, it means that the productivity of the workers would fall. That means with the given resources, they won't be able to produce as they were producing earlier. So this option seems to be right, but again, without jumping on to the conclusion, let's explore all the available options. A fall in the demand of manufacturing goods. Now this option is wrong because PPC doesn't tell us about the demand. It in fact tells us about the production possibility of a country. So this option is wrong. A rise in the quality of technology used in the manufacturing goods. Now this option is also wrong. Why? Because if there is improvement in the quality of technology, that means that the country would be able to produce more with the given resources. So with this option, the PPC should have shifted towards right. But actually this is not the scenario. So this option is also wrong. A rise in unemployment in the manufacturing sector. Well, a rise in the unemployment would have been the point within the PPC, somewhere over here, that the inefficient resource allocation points actually. But again, in the PPC, this is not the scenario, so this option is also wrong. So for question number 3, option A turns out to be the right answer. Question number 4. What is the most likely problem? Most likely problem when the government produces public goods. So we need to identify the most likely problem when the government is producing public goods. Fine. A consumption of the good is rivalrous. Well, we already know that the public goods are the goods that are non-rival in nature. So this option turns out to be wrong. This is not the most likely problem. Not all consumers are able to consume the good. Now this option is also wrong because public good is non-excludable. So this is also not likely the problem. Scarce resources may not be used in the most desirable way. Well, this can be a problem because if government is producing public goods, so it's quite likely that there won't be the most desirable allocation of resources. So government inefficiency exists when government is producing something. That is the likely problem. Anyhow, let's see the option 4. There may be underconsumption of the good. Well, this is not likely the problem because when government is producing, so there won't be underconsumption. Underconsumption of the public good happens in market economy actually. So this option is wrong. So for question number 4, option C turns out to be the right answer. Question number 5. Which statement about economics is not correct? Again, we need to identify the not correct option. Economic actions can produce unexpected side effects. Well, this option is correct because in economics we deal with the concept of externalities, so this option is correct. Economic thinking is usually based on logical reasoning at the margin. Well, this option is also right because in economics we normally deal with marginal costs and marginal benefits, so this option seems to be right. The use of scarce resources to produce a good always has a cost. Now this is also correct because we face the problem of opportunity cost. The value of goods or services involve purely objective judgment. Now this is not correct because we don't deal with objective judgments, we basically deal with subjective ones. So as this option is wrong, so for question number 5, option D turns out to be the right answer. Question number 6. If the price elasticity of supply for a good is 3, so it means PS is 3, and the price of the good increases by 10%, so percentage change in price is 10. What is the increase in quantity supplied? Okay, fine. So we know that PES is equal to percentage change in quantity supplied divided by percentage change in price. So as per the given question, if we put the values, so we have PS as 3, we have percentage change in quantity, the price of the good increases by 10%. So we have percentage in quantity as X and percentage change in price is 10%. So if we want to find X, that is percentage change in quantity, so we need to multiply 3 with 10%. So with this, the answer turns out to be 30% percentage quantity changed. So with all the given options, we have 30% over here. So for question number 6, option C turns out to be the right answer. Question number 7. The diagram shows an outward shift. Outward shift means that the supply is moving towards right. The supply curve is shifting towards right. The supply is increasing. The diagram shows an outward shift in the supply curve of television from S1 to S2. Okay, fine. We have identified that. What causes this shift? So we know that shifting basically takes place due to the non-price factor. So let's see if there is any non-price factor over here or not. An increase in consumer incomes. Well, this option is wrong because consumer incomes have something to do with the demand curve, not with the supply curve as such. An increase in the cost of raw materials. Now, this option is also wrong because when the cost of raw materials would increase, this would cause supply curve to shift towards left instead of right. So this option is wrong. An increase in the price of complements. Now, this option is also wrong because it has something to do with the demand, not with the supply itself. An increase in the size of the working population. Now, this option turns out to be right, and not because we are only left with option D, but because when there will be increase in the size of the working population, it means more labor resource would be available to the television firm. So with that, there will be more supply into the market. So for question number 7, option number D turns out to be the right answer. Question number 8. The demand for housing continues to rise as real income increases. So this means that the demand is increasing. So demand curve needs to shift towards right. Okay, fine. And more construction firms enter the market to build more houses. So that means that the supply is also increasing and the supply curve should also shift towards right. Which diagram represents the situation? So let's explore all the 4 options available over here. Supply curve is shifting from S1 to S2, so supply is increasing, fine. Demand is also shifting from D1 to D2, so there is a rightward shift for demand, so demand is also rightward shifting, so demand is also increasing. So apparently option A turns out to be right answer, but again let's explore the other options. Over here a demand curve is not shifting, no, this is not the option. Over here supply curve is not shifting, no, this is not the answer. Over here supply curve is shifting towards left, no. And demand curve is also shifting towards left, no. This is also not the right answer. So with all the 4 graphs given as per the criteria of the question, option A turns out to be the right answer. Question number 9. The demand curve for a product is perfectly elastic. Oh my god. The demand curve is perfectly elastic and the supply curve is unit elastic. What is the value of the consumer surplus and the producer surplus? So we need to find the value of consumer surplus and producer surplus with the given criteria of the question. Before jumping on to the question, let's understand consumer surplus and producer surplus in the first place. So as we know that this is the demand curve and this is the supply curve. So the consumer surplus is basically, let me identify it. The consumer surplus is basically this area which is shaded in yellow, above the equilibrium and below the demand curve. Whereas the supply curve is basically the area that is shaded in pink. So we are very clear with the areas of the demand and supply curve as such because it falls below the equilibrium and above the supply curve. So if we tend to label it properly, so this is the consumer surplus and this is the producer surplus. Now, as per the criteria of the given question, we can see that the demand curve has become perfectly elastic. So with this demand curve, we can easily see that the area of the consumer surplus has completely shrunk. There is no area of consumer surplus over here. So we can easily identify that the consumer surplus is 0 over here. I have no doubt on that. But producer surplus definitely exists, you can see this is the producer surplus. So definitely exists. And it has a finite value. It is, let me label it. This is the producer surplus. So it has a finite value actually, so it does exist. Now let's jump on to the available options. So consumer surplus between 0 to infinity, no, this is not the answer. Consumer surplus infinity, no, not the answer. Consumer surplus is 0 with option C, and consumer surplus is D. Is also 0 in option D. So either option C is the right answer or option D is the right answer. Option C says that the producer surplus is between 0 and infinity. That means that producer surplus is finite. Yes, this option seems to be the right answer, but let's explore option number 4. Option number 4, or D, option D, says that the producer surplus is infinity. No, it's not infinity. It has a finite boundaries. It is this triangle in which the producer surplus actually falls in. So option D is also not the right answer. So with the given options, option C turns out to be the right answer. Question number 10. The price of the pizza has increased from $8 to $10. Okay, initial price was $8 and final price is $10 over here. This leads to decrease in the quantity demanded. So the percentage change in the quantity is 12.5 with negative sign. What is the price elasticity of demand of pizza? Now I'm very surprised that with the same concept, with the same calculations, 2 MCQs have been given in this exam. So it's something very surprising for me. So we already know that PED is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in the price. So what do we actually have? We have the price of the pizza, okay, fine, and we have minus 12.5% as a percentage change in quantity, but we don't have the percentage change in price over here. So we know that percentage change in price is equal to final price minus initial price divided by initial price multiplied by 100. So that means that final price is $10, initial price is $8 multiplied by 100. So this turns out to be 2 over 8 multiplied by 100. So if we do simple maths over here, we get 25 as the answer. So that means percentage change in price is 25%. So in order to find PED, we need to divide both the values, and after doing simple maths, we find that the value turns out to be minus 0.5. So as the value of PD is an absolute value, so minus sign is not considered as such. So let's see, we have 0.5 in options or not. Yes, we have option A as 0.5. So for question number 10, 0.5, option A turns out to be the right answer. Question number 11. What would be categorized as direct government provision of goods and services? Okay, fine. A government grant to a firm provided healthcare services. This is not the answer, because government is actually giving grant. Government is not actually producing itself. A government regulation on the amount of sugar in the soft drinks. Now this is also wrong, because the government is regulating. Government is not providing itself. A government subsidy to a firm that operates a regional train service. Now this option is also wrong, because over here the government is subsidizing, government is not providing. A government takeover of local bus service. This option turns out to be right, because the government has taken over means that now the government will be providing local bus services. So for question number 11, option D turns out to be the right answer. Question number 12. What is a transfer payment? Now, transfer payments are actually payments that those are given to the poor segment of the society, so that they can meet their basic necessities of life. And the most important point is that against transfer payment, no actual economic activity happens. So let's see what are the options given. Advertising expenses incurred by a charity organization. No, this is not a transfer payment, because an economic activity is happening. Food vouchers to help low-income households pay for food. This seems to be the right answer at the moment, because under transfer payments, governments normally give food vouchers to help low-income people, so that they can meet their basic necessity of that is food. Option C, interest-free study loans given to deserving students by the government. No, these are not transfer payments. Although interests are free, loans are interest-free, but still they need to be repaid. So this is an economic activity that is happening. So this is also wrong. Salary paid to a nurse working in a hospital that provides free treatment. No, this is not the option. Why? Because Again, an economic activity is happening. The nurse is receiving salary against its service, against her services. So out of all these three options for question number 12, option B turns out to be the right answer. Question number 13. The diagram shows the impact of a government subsidy on the provision of a merit good. Okay, fine. If the merit good, so the supply curve should have shifted towards right. Okay. S is the original supply curve, fine. And S1 is the supply curve with subsidy, quite understandable. The subsidy has been provided to the producer and the supply has shifted towards right because the selling price of the merit good would have decreased, causing increase in the consumption. Okay, fine. So what is the total cost of the subsidy? So we need to find the total cost. So in order to find the total cost of the subsidy, we need to find the subsidy of 1 unit and then we need to get it multiplied by the quantity consumed. So initially this was the equilibrium and this was the selling price offered by the producer and this was the quantity consumed. Okay, fine. Now, after the introduction of the subsidy, this is the new equilibrium where this is the selling price of the merit good at the moment and this is the quantity consumed. So, in order to find subsidy, total cost of the subsidy, we need to find the subsidy per unit in the first place. Now, the important point is that let's suppose that if there wouldn't have been any subsidy, at 40 units being sold by the producer would have been able to sell 40 units for the price 100. You need to understand this technical point. If there would have been no subsidy at all, and we want to see that the 40 units are being sold by the producer, then the producer would have been able and willing to sell 40 units at the price of 100 that can be seen from the graph. Now, with the subsidy, the price has reduced to 80. So if you ask me to shade the area of subsidy, then this would be the area of subsidy. See, this is the area of subsidy. The area of subsidy will be above equilibrium and the quantity consumed, quantity sold by the producer, which is 40 units. So we need to find the subsidy per unit. So $100 would have been the price. The producer would have been selling without subsidy, and after subsidy, $80 is the price for selling 40 units as seen in the diagram. So this turns out to be subsidy per unit is $20. So as $40 units are being sold, so we will multiply $20 subsidy per unit with the total number of units sold. So we will get $800 as the cost of the total subsidy for selling 40 units. So out of all these options, option C turns out to be the right answer for question number 13. Which combination of measures is likely to reduce inequality in income and wealth? Inequality. Reduction of inequality in income and wealth the most. So that means that we need to do the redistribution of income from rich to the poor. So we need to see these three headlines and we need to make sure that the redistribution of income is happening from the rich to the poor. Only then the inequality will reduce. Okay, income tax. Now, income tax needs to be more progressive because if there would be more progressive income tax, more people would be coming into the tax net, more rich people would be coming into the tax net, more money would be available to be redistributed from the rich to the poor. So income tax need to be more progressive. So out of C and D, there would be one option. Inheritance tax. Now the threshold for the inheritance tax should be lowered. When we'll be lowering the threshold, this means that more people would be coming into the tax bracket of inheritance tax, and more money would be generated to be redistributed from the rich to the poor. So low threshold is the right option. So option C is seeming to be the right answer. Minimum wage. Now minimum wage should increase again. the more minimum wage would be given. Minimum wage is the amount given to the poor segment of the society so that they could meet their basic necessity expenses. So if the minimum wage would increase, then again the poor people will be getting more money and inequality would reduce. So out of all this, income tax is less progressive. That's the wrong answer. Less progressive, wrong answer. More progressive, right answer. More progressive, right answer. Lower threshold, right answer. Raised threshold, no. If we would be raising the threshold, it means less rich people will be coming under tax net. Minimum wage should increase, yes. Minimum wage should not decrease, no. So option C turns out to be the right answer for question number 14. Question number 15. Health services in an economy are provided by private clinics, okay, that charge high fees. That's wrong. The government decides health services should be provided for everyone, not based on ability to pay. Okay, fine. So this means that the government wants to, government wants health services to be free. Government wants health services to be universal so that everyone has got the access. And the government decides health services should be provided free, not based on ability to pay. Okay, fine. Which direct action should it take? Okay, let's see. Build government clinics that charge low fee to compete in the market. Well, government would never want this because if again there is a charge, no doubt it's a low fee, there is a charge, but again the health services will not be able to be universal. Only the people who would be able to pay that low fee will be having the access. So that is not the right answer. Close private clinics where provision by the market is inadequate. No, this option is not good because if we'll be closing the clinics, the private clinics, then the access to health services would reduce. Increase the tax on profit made by private clinics. No, again, this is not the right answer because if you would increase the tax, it means the private clinics would be offering health services at a higher price. This means that every consumer will not be able to get access to the quality health. Only those who have the ability to pay will be having the access. So this is again contradictory with the government aim. Nationalize private clinics and remove charging. This is the right option because now the government would be in charge in providing health services. Everybody will be having the access, so it's universal. And when the government will remove the charge, it will turn out to be free. So for question number 15, option D turns out to be the right answer. Question number 16. Why might GDP or gross domestic product not be a useful measure of economic output? So it means we need to find the weakness of the concept of GDP. Application of technology has enabled small size of workforce to achieve greater productivity. Now, this is not a useful measure. This is in fact a useful measure, not an unuseful. It's not a weakness, in fact, it's a useful measure. Damage to environment is often unquantified or even ignored. Well, this turns out to be not a useful measure of GDP. Why? Because in GDP, no focus is on the economic development of the people. So apparently option B seems the right answer, but let's see option C. Land reclamation has created more urban space to overcome crowding. Now this is a useful part of the GDP because there will be more capacity in the economy. Shortages in labor supplies have been overcome by international migration of people. Now again, this is the usefulness of GDP because now people can move from one place to another. That could help them produce more. So out of all these options, option B then turns out to be the right answer for question number 16. Why? Because the concept of GDP is not useful in terms of economic development of the people. Question number 17. What adjustment is made to change the value of GDP, that is gross domestic product, from market price to basic price? So first we need to understand the market price. The market price is the one that consumer actually pays. The price that consumer actually pays. And basic price is the price that after the adjustments is included in the GDP. So in this scenario, we need to understand 2 to 3 important things. So the first thing is that let's study the indirect first, indirect tax first. We can assume the example of sales tax, for example. Now let's say the consumer goes into the market and purchases bread. Now bread is of let's say $120. Now the consumer pays $120 and gets the bread, but actually the price of the bread is $100 and $20 is the tax amount added into the selling price or the market price of the bread. So in order to calculate the basic price, we need to subtract tax. So once we subtract tax, the basic price would be equal to market price minus tax. See, so this is the concept for indirect tax. Now, in terms of subsidies, again, let's assume the example of the bread. The actual price of the bread set in the market would have been $100. But the government is providing a subsidy of $20. So the selling price turns out to be $80 in the market. So when the consumer pays $80, he gets the bread. But actually, the actual price of the bread would have been $100. So with the introduction of subsidy, the price has reduced. So with these two concepts, what we understand is that for the basic price, we need to add subsidy into the market price. So let's see out of all these options, what are the options given to us? Add indirect tax? No, we won't be adding indirect tax. Add indirect tax? No, we won't be adding indirect. Deduct indirect tax and add subsidies. This seems to be the right answer, but let's see option D. Deduct indirect tax and deduct subsidies. No. We won't be deducting them twice. So option C turns out to be the right answer for question number 17. Question number 18. What are injections into the circular flow of income? So injections mean that money is entering into the circle of income. Injection means that money is entering in the circular flow of income. Whereas leakages mean that the money is moving out from circular flow of income. So in order to understand injections, we need to understand what are the ways in which the money gets injected into the circular flow of income. So the first one is investment. The second one we know is government spending. And the third one we know exports. So these are the three things that basically act as injections into the circular flow of income. And for the leakages, we have savings, then we have tax, and then we have imports. These are the main leakages in the circular flow of income. So let's see what the question options has. What are the question options at the moment? So what are the injections? Government spending. Yes, this is an injection. Investment. This is an expansion. In exports, this is an expansion. But let's see what the other options are. Government spending, injection, savings. These are the leakages. So option B is not the right answer. Investment. Yes, it's an injection. Savings. Again, it's a leakage. This is not the option then. Investment, yes. Taxes, again, this is the leakages, so this is not the option. So out of all these four options given for question number 18, option A turns out to be the right answer, because injection happens when there is government spending, when there is investment, and when there is exports in an economy. Question number 19. What will decrease? What will decrease if the level of employment falls? Labor force will decrease. Well, not actually, because labor force is the sum of employed plus unemployed. So the unemployed numbers might increase, but overall the labor force will remain the same, so labor force will not decrease. Actual output will decrease. Yes, this seems to be the right answer, because when the level of employment falls, the country will not be able to produce its actual output. But let's explore the other options as well. Production capacity will decrease. No, production capacity will not decrease. Although the country is able to achieve that production capacity or not, it will remain the same, because production capacity is the maximum units a country can produce. So with the level of employment falling, there won't be any change in the production capacity as such. Potential output, now again, potential output will also not decrease, because it has the same reasoning as the above. The potential output is the output that the country can achieve. What actually it is achieving, that's a different story. But what it can achieve is altogether a different game. So when the employment is falling, the potential output will remain the same. So when the employment falls, actually, the actual output can decrease. So for question number 19, option B turns out to be the right answer. Question number 20. The diagram shows the aggregated demand AD and aggregated supply AS curves for a country. Now we can see this is the aggregate supply curve, this is the aggregate demand curve, fine. The initial level of national income is given by Y1. So we can see that Y1 is the national income given over here. This is the real GDP and this is the price levels. What is the most likely new equilibrium point if there is increased productivity? So with increased productivity, the aggregate supply curve needs to shift towards right. In the manufacturing of goods produced for the domestic market. So option A can never be the answer, because aggregate supply needs to shift towards left in order to have equilibrium at A. Option B and option D are again not the correct answers, because in this scenario, both the points are on the same aggregate supply curve, so they need to shift. So this is also wrong. Option C turns out to be the right answer. Why? Because if the productivity is increasing, the aggregate supply will be shifting towards right. So new equilibrium, if I can draw properly, would sound something like this. So option C turns out to be the right answer for question number 20. Question number 21. What is the main objective of supply side policies? To bring a country's potential output up to the level of actual output. Well, this is a very nonsense sort of an option. It is a reverse logic. Actually, we need to increase our actual output to reach towards the potential output level in a country. So this is wrong. To ensure a budget surplus, no, this is also wrong, because this has something to do with the fiscal policy, not with the supply side policy. To ensure that the composition of output matches the pattern of demand. Now again, this is also wrong, because this is something to do with the efficiencies. So this is not the right option. To increase potential output, this is the right answer, because the supply side policy actually tends to increase the potential output of an economy, and then measures are taken in order to achieve that potential output. So for question number 21, option D turns out to be the right answer. 22. A government reduced direct taxes on consumers and businesses. Okay, fine. So the direct taxes have been reduced. What are likely to be the effect of these changes on consumption, investment, and national output? Okay, let's understand the question first. If the direct taxes have been reduced on consumers, it means that the consumers will be having more disposable income. That means they will be having more money to spend. That means that consumption would increase. The government reduces direct taxes on businesses now. So this means that businesses will be having more retained profits. This means that the businesses will be having more money to spend and to reinvest in the country, so the investment would also increase. National output. Now, once the consumption in an economy is increasing, investment in an economy is increasing, this means that the aggregate demand is increasing. Now, in order to meet that aggregate demand, businesses would be increasing supply to meet this increasing aggregate demand. So that means that national output will also increase. So out of all these four options, we need to see where all these threes are having an upward trend. So consumption is decreasing, wrong. Consumption is decreasing, wrong. Consumption is increasing in the option C and D. Investment is decreasing, no. So option C is not the right answer. D, consumption is increasing, investment is increasing, and national output is also increasing. So for question number 22, option D turns out to be the right answer. Question number 23. An economy has a GDP of 500 billion. The budget is surplus 2% of the GDP. What is government spending when the tax revenue is $80 billion? Okay, fine. So in the first place, we need to find the budget surplus. So budget surplus is actually 2% of GDP. That means it is 2 over 100 multiplied by 500 billion. So this turns out to be $10 billion. Now we know that budget surplus is equal to tax minus government spending. So in this case, the budget surplus is $10 billion. The tax is $80 billion, and government spending is what that we need to find. So minus government spending is equal to minus 80 plus 10, that would be minus 70. So minus 80 plus 10 would be minus 70, and government spending is minus government spending. So the minus signs will be deducted. So government spending is $70 billion. So do we have $70 billion as an option? Yes, option B is the right answer for question number 22. Question number 24. Which action might be part of an expansionary economic policy? Now with expansionary monetary policy means that the aggregate demand would tend to increase. So we need to identify the policy which is increasing aggregate demand. Reducing the budget deficit. In order to reduce budget deficit, the government will be cutting the government spending. It means aggregate demand will be getting reduced. So this is wrong. Reducing the level of government spending, again the government spending will be reduced, then aggregate demand will contract. Reducing the money supply, again if the money supply is contracted, people will be having less money to spend, so the aggregate demand would fall. So this option is also wrong. Reducing the interest rate, this option is right, because when the interest rates would be reduced, businesses will be, interest rates are basically cost of borrowing money. So when the interest rates would be reduced, so businesses would be easily able to get loans. So once they'll be having more loans, it means they will be having more money to spend. It means that the aggregate demand would increase. Likewise, on the consumer end, when there will be reducing in the interest rates, so consumers will be less inclined to put their money into the banks. They will be more inclined to throw their money into the market. So the aggregate demand perhaps on the consumers end, that is consumption, would also increase, and on the business end, investment will also increase. So that would increase aggregate demand. So for question number 24, option D turns out to be the right answer. Question number 25. What is not included? Not included in government spending while calculating aggregate demand. Okay, fine. Education is included in aggregate demand because that government will be spending money on the education, so it is included over there. Healthcare, it is also included because the government spends money on healthcare. Roads is also important because government will be making capital goods, so government spending is happening over there. Transfer payments are not included in aggregate demand. Why? Because against transfer payments, as I told you earlier as well, no economic activity is happening. So for question number 25, option D turns out to be the right answer. Question number 26. The US dollar has appreciated by 12% against an average of other major trending currencies. What is likely to have this caused? This means that the demand for dollar is increasing. So let's see which option justifies this criteria. An increase in the US imports. Well, this is not the right answer, because when the US imports would increase, then the demand for the foreign currencies would increase, not for the US dollar. So this option is wrong. An increase in the US interest rate. Well, when the US interest rates would perhaps increase, then there will be more investment coming into the US. So under that scenario, the demand for the local currency, that is dollars, would increase. So this option seems to be the right answer, but let's explore the other options too. An increase in the US money supply. Well, if there will be more money supply into the market, then the value of US dollars would fall. It will not rise. So this is wrong. An increase in the US employment rate. Well, this is quite a vague option given because employment rate has no direct connection with the appreciation of the currency itself. So with the given options, option B turns out to be the right answer for question number 26. Question number 27. What is the least likely outcome for participating countries of a move towards free trade? It means that the countries are moving towards free trade, and what would be the least likely outcome? A greater choice, a greater product choice. So this is the most likely outcome. Because once they will be engaging in the trade, so the consumers will be having greater product choice. So this is the most likely option. A more equal distribution of income. Now this is the least likely because in the international trade this is least likely to happen because there would be competition. The competition winners will be becoming stronger. So there is more unequal distribution of income actually. Greater international specialization. So this is also most likely to happen because of the free trade, because the countries would be focusing on what they specialize in. Higher standards of living. This also happens with the free trade. This is also most likely to happen. Why? Because trade increases the living standards of the people because they have greater choice of the products at a much cheaper price with high quality, so their living standards improve. So out of all these four options, option B is the least likely outcome of free trade. Question number 28. Which government measures would reduce protectionism? That is, out of all these four options, we need to find an option in which the protectionism is becoming less effective. An increase in product safety standards. Now, this will make protectionism more effective because once the safety standards of the products would improve, less products would be able to satisfy or meet those safety standards. So trade might not happen. So this is not right. An increase in subsidies in domestic firms. Now this is also a form of protectionism where the government basically subsidizes domestic firms. The selling price of the selling price of the goods of the domestic firms tend to increase. So this would also strengthen protectionism, not reduce it. An increase in the level of import quotas. Now this is a point where protectionism will be getting reduced. Why? Because if the country will be raising the level of import quotas, that means that the country would be increasing or allowing more imported goods to enter into the country. So under that scenario, this option turns out to be the right answer because over here the protectionism is getting reduced. But let's explore the fourth option as well, an increase in the rate of import duties. Now this would also increase protectionism because once the rate of import duties would increase, it means the imported goods would become expensive. Again, it is a form of protectionism. So for question number 28, option C turns out to be the right answer. Question number 29. Which policy will lead to fall in the volume of goods imported? Okay, fine. So out of these four options, we need to identify the option that will be leading to the fall of the imported goods. The imported goods or the imports would fall, in other words. A cut in income tax. No, this is not the right answer because if the income tax is cut, it means that the consumers will be having more disposable income. That means that the consumers will be spending more. So that means that the consumer will be spending on imported goods, or they can also spend on the domestic goods. So this option will not lead to the fall in the volume of imported goods. A cut in the interest rates. No, this option is also wrong because if interest rates would be cut, so as we know that interest rates are the cost of borrowing money from the bank. So with the cut in the interest rates, the borrowing would become less expensive. Businesses would be borrowing or taking more loans. This means that they will be spending more. So it's quite likely that they might be spending on the imported goods or the domestic goods. So this also option is not right. an increase in import tariffs. Now, if the import tariffs would increase, this means that the imported goods would become expensive. So this means that there would be a fall in the volume of goods imported. So option C right now tends to be the right answer, but let's see the option D, an increase in spending of training workers in domestic tourism. Well, this option is not directly linked with the fall of the volume of imported goods. It's a little vague statement as such. So out of all these four options, option C turns out to be the right answer for question number 29. Question number 30. Finally, the last MCQ of this paper. In the diagram, D1 and S1 are the initial supply and demand curves of the pound sterling on the foreign exchange markets. Quite understandable. Here we have the price of pounds, here is the quantity of pounds, this is the S1. So S1 is shifting towards F2, towards S2, that is right. So that means that the supply of the pound is increasing. Okay, fine, the demand curve is shifting towards left. That means that the demand of the pound is falling. So we need to, out of all the options given, we need to see which option satisfies this criteria. What will cause the demand curve to shift to D2 and the supply curve to S2? Fine, we got that. So before dwelling into the details of these all options available, I would like to explain a simple concept first. Now let's assume that this is a foreign exchange market where importers and exporters are interacting and they are basically exchanging pounds and dollars. Now let's say that there are UK importers. Now UK importers will be having pounds in their pockets because they sold the imported goods within the UK. So they have pounds in their pocket, so they will be supplying pounds. On the other hand, they will be demanding dollars from the market because they need those dollars to be sent to their business partners abroad in order to purchase imported goods further. So in this scenario, if imports within the UK increases, so this would lead to increase in the supply of pounds. So we need to see that the imports should increase. Fine. On the other hand, the British exporters will be having dollars in their pockets because they sold the British goods abroad or the UK goods abroad. So once they sold those British goods abroad, so they had dollars in their pockets, so they will be supplying dollars and they will be demanding pounds. Why? Because now they again need pounds to be given to local producers so that they could repurchase the goods from the British factories, which are again sold and purchased in pounds. And once they purchase those goods, they'll be exporting them abroad. So with this scenario, the exports or the British exports should decline, because when they will decline, then the demand of pound will decline. So with this criteria, we need to have this criteria that we need to find with the options available. Now let's explore the options. A decrease in the price level of other countries. Now this option seems right to me. Why? Because when there will be decrease in the price level of other countries, it means the imported goods will be becoming cheaper for the UK people. So that would lead increase in the imports. So that would lead supply increase of the pounds. So this criteria is justified in this option. Now on the other hand, when the imported goods would become cheaper, that means that the British goods will become expensive abroad. So that would lead to the decline in the exports. So that would lead to the decline in the demand of pound. So both these options are satisfied under the option A. But again, do not jump onto the conclusions. Let's explore the other options available. A depreciation in the pound sterling. Well, this option is wrong because this is the impact, this is the effect. Whereas out of all these four options, we need to find the cause of what happened when the supply of the pounds increased and the demand of the pounds decreased. So this option is invalid. a reduction in the level of UK imports. Now, this is wrong because when the imports would fall, so this criteria will not be met. So when this criteria will not be met, so the supply of the pounds will not increase. And also perhaps this option is not giving us any idea about the demand of the pound. So this option is wrong. Option D, an increase in the UK interest rates. Now this option is wrong because when the UK interest rates would increase, then the foreign investors will be interested in investing within the UK. That would lead to the increase in the demand of the pound sterling. So this option doesn't satisfy our criteria. So this option is wrong. So with all the 4 options given, option A turns out to be the right answer for question number 30.